Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffs continue to hammer the transfer portal and transform this roster. And before we even get into it, I do just want to talk about how intriguing of a story this is. I really do think this could be a blueprint for a lot of coaches down the road in terms of changing a program around. What Coach Prime is doing with this Colorado program is not possible 5 years ago. With the current transfer portal as it sits today, you can do this. You look at 5 years ago when coaches take over programs that have been struggling, it normally takes a couple of years to get the recruiting classes going, to get the talent into the program and the depth chart in order to be competitive. Take a look at the transfer portal this year and maybe last year. It's becoming a more feasible route to completely overhaul your roster and just add new faces immediately, because you're getting guys who have proven at the college football level that they can play at a high level. That's exactly what Coach Prime is doing. So before we talk about it, I just want to kind of highlight the magnitude and importance of what Coach Prime is doing at Colorado. And I'm not saying it's going to work or not work. That being said, it's different. We haven't seen it before. And Coach Prime could really be kind of a trailblazer in the sense of how to turn over a program, how to turn around a program like he is trying to do with this Colorado Buffaloes program. I find it a very interesting story to follow. And again, just before we get into it, want to say thank you to you guys. We've been talking a lot of Colorado football. Not a Colorado fan, but I am very intrigued about what's going on in Boulder. And so I just want to say thank you to you guys. All the support you guys have shown, over 5,000 subscribers on the channel. That's all thanks to you guys. So if you do enjoy the content, you want to support the fellas, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you are a Colorado Buffs fan, we'll be talking plenty of Colorado football, as it's going to be continuing to be a busy next couple of weeks in the transfer portal as Colorado fills out this 75-man scholarship roster. Let's get into the new additions that we saw over the weekend. And again, not necessarily doing specific players at this time, now just doing them in glance. I mean, we're talking about Tuesday morning. This is the 40th new member joining the team in EJ Hawkins, who comes over from Ole Miss. You still have 13 open spots left. That's probably subject to change in the next couple hours, it seems. But we're continuing to monitor how this roster is building. Let's start with EJ Horton coming over from Marshall. One of my favorite additions in the last couple of days for Colorado, and you want to know why. Speed kills. Like, speed is king at the college football level, and EJ Horton has that in bunches, right? Reportedly a low 4.3 40 kind of guy. What is he going to do for that offense? He's a guy that you need to respect. It is really hard to cover a player that's just straight up faster than you. And you're seeing teams, a lot of teams wanted him out of the transfer portal because of the speed that he brings to the table. Cornerbacks need to respect it. You need to have a safety over top. That opens up the offense for a lot of other players, because there's a lot more space to be worked with when you have a guy like EJ Horton who has all that speed. And that's something that I think Colorado's really gone after. Dawson was a burner from Auburn. Jimmy Horn Jr. is a very, very fast receiver from USF. It does look like Coach Prime is kind of taking that approach in terms of building this offense. We want to be fast and we want to be hard to cover. And again, it's hard to cover someone who's just straight up faster than you. The next addition, kind of a blue chipper, and that's another point I think I want to make, is so many Colorado haters, if you will, just say, who is this transferring in? When you have to replace pretty much your whole scholarship roster, there are guys who are just going to be depth players. And Jalen Ellis might just be a depth player, right? He transferred to West Virginia, recommits to Colorado over the weekend. Is he going to be a starter for Colorado? He might be. It's kind of hard to get a feel for what this depth chart is going to look like. But he's also a guy that has played big-time football at Baylor. West Virginia wanted him out of the portal. And even if he doesn't start, he's still a depth player that's going to be a solid player to have in that locker room, and probably more talented than most of this Colorado wide receiving room last year. And so a lot of the haters, you might say, are saying, oh, they're just bringing in scrubs. And when you have to replace 75 scholarship guys almost, some of these guys are just going to be depth players. And that's okay. You look at every roster across the country, they have depth players. That's the purpose of it. There's backup players who aren't necessarily starting caliber players, but they're damn good backups. If you need them in the pinch, they can perform. I think that is kind of what Jalen Ellis is coming over from Baylor. Roderick Ward, very, very interesting cat. This is a guy that this is my favorite part about the transfer portal, is some players out of high school just didn't get the looks, right? And so they didn't get the offers from those Power 5 schools, and you have to maybe settle for a Southern Utah football program. That doesn't mean you can't play. And I think that's the coolest part of the transfer portal is you get guys who maybe overlooked from the high school ranks. They go to Southern Utah, they light it up, and now you're getting the Power 5 offers. That seemingly is the kind of a guy like Roderick Ward, right? First team all-conference guy at Southern Utah, 4 interceptions, 39 tackles last year. Ball hawk, a guy who's a playmaker. And you know Coach Prime is going to value guys in the secondary who find the ball, who attack the ball and create those big splash plays. Roderick Ward, a guy that I think will be able to do that. And then we get into kind of the beef boys. And this is what we talked about. And I think the last couple times I've talked about Colorado football, people kind of misunderstood it. We were taking a look at this Colorado depth chart, this Colorado roster, and just saying what position groups do they maybe need to address or continue to address. And I said the trenches, specifically on the defensive line. You look at 2 weeks ago, Leonard Payne and Shane Cooks, 2 transfers, were the only 2 scholarship guys slated to play in the interior. And that's a position that you need depth because you need to rotate those big dogs in there. And the moral of the story is that people get banged up on the trenches. You get rolled up on. It's important to have guys that you can cycle in and out. And I said that's where they need to go next. I think that was taken as Coach Prime can't land guys in the trenches. I did not mean it like that. He's just done a really good job landing those athletes on the outside, the playmakers, but you can't ignore the trenches. I think Coach Prime is certainly doing that because you look at the next couple guys he brings in, guys on the trenches. Bishop Thomas is a really interesting one. Former top 500 dude nationally out of the 2022 class. I think it's really important the action that Colorado's doing with the young transfers, right? These guys are essentially took one redshirt year at a Power 5 school, didn't play much, and now they're coming to Colorado essentially as kids out of high school with eligibility left, right? Guy like Bishop Thomas, 4 years of eligibility. He's going to be a staple on that defensive line for Colorado. And this fact of the matter is a top 500 dude nationally from the 2022 class, that would have been one of the best, if not the best kid from that 2022 class if you take a look at what Colorado brought in. So, like, you're seeing the talent just become different. And just because Bishop Thomas wasn't a Power 5 dominant starter at Florida State does not mean he's a bad addition to this Colorado roster. Kind of getting back to the point that when you have to replace almost 75 scholarships, some of these guys are just going to be depth players. And that's completely okay. You need depth. Every team needs depth. And so I do think Bishop Thomas, a little bit overlooked in the sense of how much he can mean to this program. Reggie Young had a very, very interesting story. Starts at Northwestern State, goes to JUCO, goes and plays at Liberty, plays in 9 games, and now he ends up at Colorado. Probably another guy that won't be a starter, although he might. You're also adding that depth and that beef to the offensive line. And my biggest takeaway, I think, is you're getting Power 5 bodies in the trenches. And I think that's a little underrated. An underrated story is just having the guys who have the body type to be Power 5 starters in the trenches. Bishop Thomas, Reggie Young, and Jabron Hawkins, EJ Hawkins, he goes by, all have that. And that's the last guy we'll talk about is EJ Hawkins, who did not play much at Ole Miss, but he's an interesting cat because he has that versatility. And I think you're starting to see a lot of college football programs, even in the NFL to an extent, look at guys on the defensive line who can be versatile. You're seeing a lot of multiple different fronts. And so having a guy who can play the 5-tech on the outside the tackle, can kick into the 3-tech and play on the inside and rush the passer is kind of a coveted trait for a lot of these college football defensive coordinators and at the NFL level. And I think J.J. Hawkins coming over from Ole Miss certainly has that, right? What I've seen, 6'2", 265 pounds, kind of a, I wouldn't say fire hydrant body, but fire hydrant-esque body. A guy that plays with a low pad level, good leverage, is going to be able to hold up in the run game. Again, do I think he's going to be a starter when you look at this Colorado depth chart? Maybe not. But he's certainly going to be a guy that's a rotational piece for this Colorado program. And I just, whenever I'm on Twitter, and it's the Coach Prime discussion it's so interesting because it's so polarizing. You have some people who are just like very, very optimistic, and you have some people who are just blindly pessimistic about how this is going to go. I'm probably closer to being in the middle. I'm more just intrigued. I'm more just excited to follow this. And so I try to keep it as impartial as I can when I'm just talking about these guys who are coming in. But I'd be lying if I wasn't excited to see what this Colorado football program can be in 2023. We haven't seen this before. And I think a guy like J.J. Hawkins, The haters, the people who are pessimistic said, oh, he's just picking up the scraps of the transfer portal. What I'm seeing is he's just getting depth to this program. Like, this team had no players. And so they just have to go get Power 5 bodies to come into this program. And that's kind of what JJ Hawkins is. You're not going to be able to bring 75 scholarship starters into this program. It's not possible. Nobody could do that. So I'm really, like, even though it's not the biggest name in the transfer portal, it's another guy coming from the SEC who's going to be able to add depth to this program. Again, this story continues to be interesting. Kind of want to talk about just some of the remaining targets, right? You're talking about 13 open spots left. Sean Washington is the last guy I kind of want to talk about, right? He's a 2022 kid, very similar story to Bishop Thomas, a top 500 player nationally out of high school from Georgia. I trust Georgia offensive lineman. He visited Boulder a couple weeks ago. He's a guy that I think would really fit in. I think they're good on wide receivers, although the wide receiver market in the transfer portal is absolutely phenomenal. Again, there's still, even to this day, right, in the transfer portal seemingly wrapping up, if you take a look at who's available still in the portal, there are a lot of good football players. And I think that Colorado will continue to get some of these good football players to round out this roster as they head into summer camp. And then once this shakes out, we'll hop back on and kind of project this Colorado team in 2023. I don't think I'm going to be there like a winning. You saw, 8.1% of the bets at MGM or have them going to college football playoffs. Like, I don't know if I'm there yet, but this is a team that's going to be improved. There's no question about that. The talent has been better. And now I think the bigger question is, what can they do in 2023 and how can that springboard them into the 2024 recruiting class and the 2025 recruiting class? Because this is not a one-year rebuild. This is a couple years rebuild. You can rebuild this program faster than you could 5 years ago because of the transfer portal, but this isn't you're not taking a team that won 1-11 and going 12-0 and win a national title. I think Coach Prime knows that. I think a lot of the Colorado fans know that, but you got to be patient, and this thing might turn around a lot faster than a lot of people think. Again, appreciate the support you guys have shown. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.